For decades, red meat has been labeled the villain, chicken, the safe choice. But what if that message was crafted more by marketing than by science? Tonight, we'll peel back the label and look at what's actually happening inside your body after each bite. You've heard it all before. Avoid saturated fat, fear cholesterol, and stick with white meat. But behind those simplified claims lies a much deeper truth. The type of fat, the way the animal lived, and how the meat was processed. These shape your inflammation, your energy, and your future. 1. The fat trap. Why white meat isn't innocent. For years, chicken was sold as the safer choice. Lean, mild, heart-healthy. And pork quietly followed behind. Rebranded as the other white meat. Low fat, less scary, more acceptable. But beneath that clean image, something else is cooking. It's not the color of the meat that matters. It's what the animal ate, how it lived, and what that did to its fat. Let's go deeper. When a chicken is raised in confinement, fed soy, corn, and antibiotics, it doesn't just grow faster, it changes on the inside. Specifically, its fat becomes rich in omega-6 fatty acids, the inflammatory kind. The same thing happens with industrial pork. The omega-6 content skyrockets, and that balance between omega-6 and omega-3, the one your body needs to keep inflammation in check, breaks. Most people think chicken is lower in fat than beef. That's true if you remove the skin, if you only eat the breast, if you don't fry it in seed oils. But here's the truth. A typical factory-raised chicken can have up to 30% of its fat as omega-6. That's the kind of fat linked to chronic inflammation, hormonal disruption, and joint degeneration. Grass-fed beef, by comparison, has far less omega-6 and far more of the anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Yet we've been taught to fear the steak and trust the nugget. The problem isn't the protein, it's the fire inside the fat. Fat isn't just calories, it's code. It speaks to your cells, and the fats from confined animals send the wrong messages. They whisper inflammation, they nudge your immune system into overreaction, they keep the body on edge. So, what can you do? Start by swapping chicken for grass-fed beef once or twice a week. Look for labels like pasture-raised or 100% grass-fed. Skip the skin-on, deep-fried cuts. Avoid pre-seasoned supermarket meats loaded with omega-6 oils. And most importantly, don't judge by appearance. White meat doesn't mean clean, and red meat doesn't mean risk. Let me ask you something. Have you ever reached for chicken because it felt safer? What if the true danger was hiding in the fat, silent, invisible, and right on your plate? Tonight, that label deserves a second glance. Not just for what it says, but for what it doesn't. 2. Omega Wars. What really drives inflammation. Inside every cell of your body, there's a quiet war taking place, not between good and bad, but between balance and overload. And at the center of it is fat. Not the kind you see on the scale, but the kind embedded in your tissues, the kind that shapes your hormones, your joints, even your immune response. We're talking about omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. Both are essential. Both play important roles, but like any partnership, the balance is everything. In traditional diets, wild fish, grass-fed meat, nuts, greens, this ratio stayed close to 1:1 or 2:1. That's the balance your body evolved to handle. That's the range where inflammation can rise when needed and fall when no longer useful. But today, in most industrial diets, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio isn't 2:1. It's 15:1, 20:1, sometimes worse. And most of that excess omega-6 comes from one place: factory-raised animal products. When animals are fed corn, soy, and industrial grains, their fat becomes loaded with omega-6. And when we eat them, so do we. The Journal of Lipid Research reports that factory chicken and pork can reach omega-6 levels 3 to 5 times higher than their pastured counterparts. And here's why it matters. Omega-6 fuels the production of pro-inflammatory molecules. These aren't evil. They help heal cuts, fight infections, repair damage. But when they're always present, when omega-6 floods the system, your body enters a state of chronic inflammation. That inflammation doesn't scream, it simmers in your joints, in your arteries, in your brain. It leads to stiffness, brain fog, fatigue, and over time, the slow rise of diseases we label as aging. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can shift the ratio. You can change the chemistry of your cells. Try this. Swap 2 servings of industrial chicken per week for wild salmon or sardines. Add ground flaxseed, walnuts, or chia to your breakfast. Prioritize grass-fed or pastured meats whenever possible. Cut back on seed oils, especially in processed foods or restaurant meals. This isn't about extremes, it's about restoring balance. Let me ask you, have you ever cleaned up your diet, yet still felt stiff, swollen, or tired? The culprit might not be sugar. It might be the invisible imbalance inside your fat cells, and that imbalance begins not on your plate, but in the field where the animal was raised. 3. The myth of cholesterol and TMAO. For years, cholesterol has been the headline, a single number feared by millions, a reason to avoid eggs, butter, and especially red meat. But like many health stories, the truth is quieter and far more complex. Let's start with the basics. Cholesterol isn't a toxin, it's a building block. Your body uses it to make hormones, to stabilize cells, to create vitamin D. In fact, your liver makes more cholesterol each day than you eat in most meals. So, when meat gets blamed for heart disease purely because of cholesterol, it misses something critical: context. Now, let's talk about something newer and more misunderstood. It's called TMAO, short for trimethylamine N-oxide. Here's how it works. When you eat certain nutrients, like choline and carnitine, found in red meat, eggs, and fish, gut bacteria break them down. Then your liver converts those byproducts into TMAO. Some studies have found that high levels of TMAO are associated with greater heart disease risk. But here's the key word: associated. It's a correlation, not causation. In people with poor metabolic health, insulin resistance, and unbalanced gut bacteria, TMAO levels are often higher. But that doesn't mean TMAO caused the disease. It may simply be a marker of deeper dysfunction. And here's the twist almost no one mentions. Fish, especially cold water species like salmon and cod, contain 10 to 50 times more TMAO than red meat. Yet fish is known to reduce cardiovascular risk. How can that be? Because context matters. Because omega-3s balance inflammation. Because a healthy microbiome changes the way your body processes nutrients. In other words, it's not the food alone, it's the state of your system. If your metabolism is balanced, if your gut bacteria are diverse and stable, then TMAO likely means nothing. But if your body is inflamed, overfed, and undernourished, then yes, red meat could appear as a risk. Not because it's inherently bad, but because it's entering a system already off balance. So, what can you do? Focus on gut health, fiber, fermented foods, and a variety of plants. Choose clean protein, pasture-raised meat, wild fish, and organic eggs. Don't fear cholesterol. Watch inflammation and insulin instead. Let me ask you, have you ever avoided a food, like eggs or steak, because of what you were told about cholesterol? And yet, did the fatigue remain? Did the brain fog stay? Maybe it wasn't the meat. Maybe it was the fire already burning. And we've been blaming the smoke all along. 4. Meat ranking. From clean to catastrophic. Not all meat is equal, not even close. You've probably heard, just eat lean cuts. Choose white over red. Fish is always the best. But what if the real difference wasn't color, or even fat content? What if the truth was in how the animal lived? Let's take a journey, from the pasture to the feedlot, from the cold sea to the chemical tank. At the top of the list, wild salmon and grass-fed beef. Wild salmon swims freely. It eats a natural diet of algae and smaller fish. It's rich in EPA and DHA, the most potent anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Grass-fed beef grazes on open fields. Its fat profile is balanced. Its omega-6 to omega-3 ratio sits between 2 to 1 to 4 to 1. The range considered anti-inflammatory by most lipid researchers. These are meats that support your body's rhythm. not fight against it. Next in line, pastured chicken and pork. If raised outdoors, eating bugs, grasses, and roaming naturally, their fat profile improves. Not perfect, but better. The omega-6 content stays moderate, and the animals live lives that reflect balance. Now we descend. Farmed salmon still contains omega-3s, but it also carries risk. Crowded tanks, artificial coloring, diets that shift its fat toward omega-6. It's better than most meats, but not what it used to be. Next comes the real concern: factory-farmed meats. Cows packed into feedlots, chickens confined in sheds, pigs raised on grain slop and antibiotics. These animals live in stress, eat unnatural food, and their fat shows it. Industrial chicken can reach an omega-6 ratio of 20-to-1 or higher. That's inflammatory territory. At the very bottom, processed meats, nuggets, sausages, Spam, deli slices. These aren't just meat, they're petri dishes filled with preservatives, binders, colorings, and seed oils. They carry not just omega-6, but chemical load. Not just calories, but confusion for your cells. So, what should you choose? Prioritize wild-caught fish and grass-fed red meat. If eating poultry or pork, look for pastured, organic, or humane-certified labels. Cut back on deli slices, nuggets, and anything deep-fried or shelf-stable. Rotate your proteins: salmon one day, beef the next, legumes or eggs in between. Let me ask you, when you think of healthy meat, what comes to mind first? Color, fat percentage, marketing claims? Or, now, will it be something deeper, where it lived, what it ate, and what its life says about how it will fuel yours? 5. The real villain: what we do. After the animal dies, we often talk about the animal, its breed, its fat, its feed. But there's something we rarely mention: what happens after the animal dies. Because the biggest danger in meat today isn't the cut, it's the processing. Let's look closely. When meat leaves the farm, it should be simple, clean, whole, honest. But in the world of mass production, it becomes something else. It's marinated in seed oils, injected with preservatives, stuffed with fillers, coated in coatings, ground, formed, fried, packaged, colored, stretched. It's not nourishment anymore, it's chemistry. Take chicken nuggets. You might think you're eating protein, but less than 50% of that nugget may be actual chicken. The rest? Wheat in the breading. Soy protein, isolate. High omega-6 oils. Preservatives with names you can't pronounce. Additives that imitate texture, color, and flavor. Now multiply that across. Deli meats, sausages, Vienna sausages, corned beef, fish fingers, jerky, fast food burgers. Most of them contain omega-6 laden oils, artificial flavors, chemical stabilizers, and nitrates. Many are deep fried or preserved in inflammatory fats. But the real problem, it's not just what's added, it's what your cells think is happening. The body doesn't recognize these new forms. They confuse digestion. They spike the immune system. They load the liver and kidneys. They slow down cellular repair. Inflammation rises, energy drops, aches settle in, and the link between processed meat and chronic illness tightens. Studies from BMJ Nutrition have shown strong associations between processed meats and risk for heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and colorectal cancer. So, what's the alternative? Buy minimally processed meat, whole cuts, ground meat, with 1 to 2 ingredients max. Look for nitrate-free, no added sugar, no seed oil labels. Choose brands that use celery powder or natural preservatives. Cook at home when possible. Bake, steam, or saute with olive oil or ghee. Treat deli meats as occasional, not everyday foods. Let me ask you, have you ever eaten something you thought was meat, but it tasted different? Maybe your body noticed something first: a heaviness, a reaction, a restless night. Because when we turn food into a formula, our bodies don't just digest it, they defend against it. And perhaps the real villain in modern nutrition isn't meat, it's what we've done to it. You've likely spent years choosing meats based on color, white over red, lean over fatty, light over dark, because that's what you were told. That's what felt safe. But today, maybe something has shifted, because it's not about the color. It's not even about the fat. It's about the story the meat carries, where it lived, what it ate, what we did to it after it died. That story becomes your story. It becomes your skin, your cells, your rhythm, your inflammation, or your healing. So maybe the question isn't, what meat is good? Maybe the real question is, what life did it live? And what life does it give you in return? Let your body be the guide now. Let nourishment come from balance, not branding. Let the meat on your plate reflect the care you give yourself. If this conversation made you pause, subscribe gently. There's more to unlearn and more to rebuild. Next time, we'll explore the oil in your kitchen that's marketed as heart healthy, but maybe quietly fueling inflammation. What's one meat you trusted until today? Or one small shift you're now ready to make? Your story might be the next person's turning point.